1942, at least 110,000 men, women, and children of Japanese ancestry were excluded from the Pacific coast of the United States. Both sides in the internment debate agree on this historical fact. And their agreement ends. When it comes to the cause, the context, the legality, the manner, and the consequences of the exclusion, there are little, if any, other areas of agreement between the parties engaged in the debate. As years pass, those who participated in historic events die. Memories fade and change. Opportunists pull historical events out of context and manipulate them for political ends. Bainbridge Island in Washington's Puget Sound is ground zero for the relocation internment controversy, being both first for evacuation and the site of Station S, one of a chain of top-secret radio stations intercepting Imperial Japanese coded messages. 2006. The Bainbridge Island World War II Nikkei Internment and Exclusion Memorial Committee conducted ceremonies for the Let It Not Happen Again Memorial. War and Magic here presents the speeches delivered on that occasion, side by side with excerpts from the historical record.
Thank you for coming to this very special day. This is the 64th anniversary of the first Japanese Americans to be forcibly removed in World War II and taken to internment camps. We have a very special program today. When people ask what this memorial is all about, I often say it's simply about history, honor, and healing. It's a historic place. It was the first place in American history. History is all about first places, and the Bainbridge Island Eagle Dale Ferry Dock is going to be right up there with Kitty Hawk or Plymouth Rock in its recognition of an important first place. A shameful and sad one, but an important first one nonetheless. It's honoring, because it's honoring the courageous people who had to suffer and endure that indignity. Many of them have used adjectives like shameful, or it was degrading, I was embarrassed, angry. Yet they took it with that quiet dignity and strength and persevered. And with that we have honor, and it's very important that we remember that this is a living memorial. Sadly though, as time goes on, 64 years has passed and more of those survivors are leaving. We've closed that circle of life just recently on Bainbridge Island in a sad but poetic way. The very first baby born in the Manzanar camp, Leonard Hayashida, passed away last month. The first couple, Bainbridge Island couple, Sam and Kay Nakau, Sam just passed away Friday. And they complete the full circle of that story. We hope to build this memorial and to have the remaining survivors there when we have that structure, so they can be there to cut the ribbon. It'll be a very hollow ceremony indeed if we have this beautiful memorial built and none of the survivors that we were trying to honor are there to celebrate that with us. So that's why we're in a race against time. Right in front of me is a model of this project. This is a $5 million memorial. We have raised a little over $2 million. $1 million has gone toward the first 5 acres of the Pritchard Park property to your right, the east side of the west side of Pritchard Park, and the first $1 million is going for the first phase. The very first phases are going to happen. The first phase is going to happen Monday. We are going to start building construction on this sacred ground. We will build the basic infrastructure, the roads, the parking lot, the walkways, a recreated wetland, and the padding for the second phase, which will be the story wall, a model of which is right in front of me at the base of this podium. That still means we have $3 million to go for the pier, which is the third phase, and the memorial building, the interpretive center, and meeting rooms. Behind me is a beautiful quilt a quilt made by the Bainbridge Island Women's Club, handmade, worth thousands of dollars in, I guess, retail value. It's priceless in our hearts. It's a memorial, it's a testament to the healing part of our story. Because Bainbridge Island is a unique place, whereas the rest of America at that time was eagerly supporting and endorsed the removal of people who look like the enemy. This island was different. Through the leadership of Walt and Millie Woodward, the editors and publishers of the Bainbridge Review, the first newspaper and only one throughout the war to editorialize and oppose the internment as being unconstitutional, to the people and family and friends on this island that welcomed them home. That's part of that healing, and this quilt really represents that, because it's an enveloped. Quilts, what do the quilts do? Well, they keep you warm, and they wrap around you, and they make you have a sense of home. There's also a lot of love and care in that quilt, and it really is a nice metaphor of the common threads that we all have as a society and a country. And when you pull away one of those threads, you may not notice it because it's maybe not your thread, or maybe not the color you care about, but it weakens that quilt. It weakens the fabric of our society. And if we leave anything today from this, we should remember that we should not let it happen again. We should not let fear, prejudice, hysteria drive you to irrational and frightening decisions. So to start our guest of very acknowledged speakers, I would like to have you give a warm welcome to Donna Mohr. She is the president of the North Kitsap Interfaith Council.
The yellow peril, according to the fevered imagination of the daily press, like the Los Angeles Times, was ready to devour the livelihood of the white population. Wow. Clarence said, shameful. When on February 19, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, the evacuation order commenced the roundup of 120,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry and heritage to internment camps. The executive order was fueled by anti-Japanese sentiment among farmers who competed against Japanese labor, politicians who sided with anti-Japanese constituencies, and the general public, whose frenzy was heightened by the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and the media hype. Something far more insidious. My husband Robert is a first-generation American. Both his parents were born in Germany. We know that some Italians, Germans, and other Europeans were interned during World War II. Robert's father was one of those people. Robert and his mother used to board a train in New Jersey and travel to New York to visit his father on weekends during the war, where he was interned in the factory he worked in. Robert's father was still a German citizen, and as a tool and die maker, he worked on the Norden bomb site. But Robert and his mother were free to live at home. Why? Because that underlying insidious thing, quite simply, was racism. Recently, I read something Eleanor Roosevelt wrote after visiting one of the internment camps in 1943. I can well understand the bitterness of people who have lost loved ones at the hands of the Japanese military authority. And we know that the totalitarian philosophy, whether it is in Nazi Germany or fascist Italy or in Japan, is one of cruelty and brutality. It is not hard to understand why people living here in hourly anxiety for those they love have difficulty in viewing this problem objectively. But for the honor of our country, the rest of us must do so. These understandable feelings are aggravated by the old-time economic fear on the West Coast and the unreasoning racial feeling which certain people, through ignorance, have always had whenever they come in contact with people who are different from themselves. We have no common race in this country, but we have an ideal to which all of us are loyal. We cannot progress if we look down upon any group of people amongst us because of race or religion. Every citizen in this country has a right to our basic freedoms, to justice, and to equality of opportunity. We retain the right to lead our individual lives as we please, but we can only do so if we grant to others the freedoms that we wish for ourselves. From the diary of Koichiro Miyazaki. Rain. I haven't seen rain for a long time. As I look into the birch forest, it is shrouded with a gentle spring rain. It is all very dreamlike. My diaries, which were confiscated, were returned cut up and censored. It is an internee's diary. Do they have the right to do such things? At least they should give some reasons. They can confiscate my diaries, but the facts of my life will not disappear. This memorial helps all of us to ensure that the facts of the individual lives of the Bainbridge Islanders who were taken away on this day over 60 years ago will not disappear. And so may it be.
Our next speaker is Reverend Brooks Andrews. He is from the Japanese Baptist Church. I had the item written wrong in the brochure. And he's got a fantastic story to tell. One of the reasons why faith was so important to all communities was the support not only from the Woodwards and the Bainbridge Island community, but the faith communities supported the Japanese communities throughout the West Coast. And Brooks has a very wonderful story to tell about his family's involvement and support. Please give a warm welcome to Reverend Brooks Andrews.
Thank you. 63 years ago on this date and on this site, an event happened that has long been forgotten, except in the minds of those who experienced it. Today we bring the past to the present. 227 men, women, and children, most of whom were American citizens, were herded by U.S. soldiers into military trucks and brought to this site for transport to a place only God knew. With only 6 days' notice, they were forced from their homes and their farms and allowed to bring only those items that they could carry. I was an eyewitness to these events. Being a boy of 5 years of age, the events of the forced incarceration of innocent American citizens is seared into my memory. But you may ask the question how my family and I were participants in this event. My father was pastor of the Japanese Baptist Church from 1929 until 1955. And he would often come to Bainbridge Island and take the island young Japanese folks out for outings to Mount Rainier, to other places in Puget Sound, as well as continue the ministry to the needs of the Japanese community here. The year was 1942. I stood on a bridge over the railroad tracks at Camp Harmony. Its civilian name was the Western Washington State Fairgrounds, Puyallup, Washington. There was a temporary holding camp for the internees before they were dispersed to the internment camps. I remember the trains lined the tracks like steel snakes, eager to devour their fleshly cargo. And I watched from the bridge as my friends, my people, boarded the trains, unknown to me that I was a witness to a pale shadow of other trains half a world away in a darker setting, devouring innocence. Then we went home. To what? Our reason for being was no longer here. They were gone. Back at the Japanese Baptist Church, my father marked off the gymnasium floor in 10-foot square plots with tape. And the purpose was for those forced from their homes to the camps to store their goods as much as possible, including those from Bainbridge Island. Because of our association with the Japanese, the FBI would come to our home and grill my father sometimes as long as 3 hours, checking on his movements and his interplay with the Japanese. So the church was closed. It was locked up. Mother's Day 1942 was the first Sunday that the church was completely empty. And severed by the keen edge of bigotry and hysteria, we left our house in Seattle and moved to Twin Falls, Idaho, to continue ministry in an internment camp named Minidoka. Dad threw himself into the task of ministry and made daily trips into Minidoka. I have vivid recollections of the Minidoka camp. High barbed wire fence surrounded the whole camp. There were guard towers. There were soldiers in the guard towers with guns. We were told, but it was for the internees' protection. But then I asked the question, why were the guns pointed inward and not out? It was a bizarre American concentration camp. As word sped, we were sometimes targets of bigotry and hysteria. We were often called names, traitor, turncoat, and the worst of all, Jap lover. We were accused of consorting with the enemy, and again the FBI would make visits to our house. One day, Dad went to a cafe in town and was refused service. The owner of the cafe threw Dad bodily out onto the sidewalk. This same man would stand in front of our rented house and shout ugly epithets at us. And later, he bought the house that we were renting, and he forced us to move. My father made 56 round trips to Seattle. To bring back some of the goods stored in the church gymnasium. He covered at least 1,500 miles each round trip, and this was in the days before any freeways were built. Gasoline and tires were often hard to purchase, not only because of wartime restrictions, but also because of hatred and bigotry. In one southern Idaho gas station, the attendant was slow in coming to pump gas. My father writes this, "I noticed the service station attendant was awfully slow coming. I got out of the truck to meet him, and he said, 'Are those Japs?' I told him, 'They are Japanese fathers whose boys were fighting for you and me.' It didn't make any difference. He would not sell me any gas." In January 1945, Dad helped the first family back to the farms near Seattle. And during the spring and summer, he helped organize college students to clean the houses and yards of returning Japanese, working on farms and painting out "No Japs Allowed" signs. All the work my father had done was out of the love of God in his heart, no matter if one were Christian, Buddhist, atheist, Shinto. It was done because it was the right and moral thing to do. I believe my father was prophetic in words uttered in 1976 in an interview with the Seattle Times. He said, "I believe it could happen again if we're not careful. People haven't changed that much. I don't mean necessarily to the Japanese, but to another group. It could be a social group or a racial group." Indeed. Today I offer God's blessing on this place to sanctify it holy, a place of remembrance, a place of contemplation, and a place of healing. The world may know nothing nor care little for what we do here today, but we will not forget. We must remember the past, for it gives strength to live authentically the present. As we stir this soil today, Each footstep releases a name long buried, now resurrected. Names like Fukuyama, Hirakawa, Koba, Hitamoto, Kojima, Noritake, Takimoto, and many others. A foundation coming to fruition this day. So I beg you, walk quietly, bend low, and listen. Listen to their whispers. Do you hear them? 227 voices rising in sweet concert. And they say, never forget, never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. A moving story. I thank you for the honor of your father, and I believe he's a true patriot, true American, and a wonderful man of faith, a wonderful example for us all. Another wonderful man of faith, a man of peace, right here on Bainbridge Island. Many people are surprised to find out that we have a Buddhist temple on Bainbridge Island, but we do. And please give a warm welcome to Gilberto Perez.
Buddhist order of the St. Nichiren School of Japan. It has taken 64 years to begin the Japanese memorial for the injustices done to American Japanese citizens on this sacred land who were forcibly removed on March 30th, 1942. It took 99 years for Old Man's House of 1.1 acres to be returned to the Suquamish tribe, and 164 years for Chief Leshais to be exonerated, hanged for killing, a killing he did not commit. His people's fishing and hunting lands were taken away. Our history is replete with broken treaties, killings, and relocations of peoples, beginning with natives, blacks, Chinese, Japanese, and now a war on terrorists, mostly innocent civilians, Muslim civilians, women and children, and called collateral damage. When will we ever learn never to let it happen again? When will we ever learn? In Europe, it was the Jews taken to death camps. We got it, our American citizens, in concentration camps. A concentration of peoples. Internment is a nice word. While many of their family members served with honor in the war and the betterment to their returned communities. Miss Mieko Watanabe comes to mind, born in 1911 in the village of Bellevue, Washington, and taken to Puyallup Fairgrounds with many others of Washington in a cold January of 1942. She of a few was provided with blankets and food, sneaked under the fences by natives and a few Anglos of truth. Many of the 1,500 Japanese Americans of downtown Hilltop Tacoma never returned to their homes. The truth written and spoken of a few comes to mind in Walt and Millie Woodward, Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite. It cost them popular support and advertisers in the Bainbridge Review, and Edward Murrow lost CBS support for speaking truth to power. We now have a Congress and a Senate silenced on the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. What are we afraid of? Truth? Being unpatriotic? Our history? Truth and reconciliation is the path of freedom now, and not generations later. My father served on the Liberty ships during the war and said this was the greatest country. He must be turning in his grave now. The South was different, he said. And I'll read part of a poem by Clarence Infused in the 1930s. Let America be America again. Let America be the great, strong land of love. Let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic liberty. But opportunity is real, and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. I end with a saying from our founder monk, Fuji Nijidatsu Shonin, who walked with Mahatma Gandhi in the 30s for the freedom and rights of India. The true origin of peace does not lie in politics or in economics, but in the enhanced practice of morality and esteem for religious faith. Similarly, the true origin of war does not lie in politics nor economics, but solely in the decline of practicing morality and the ridicule of religions of faith. The source of peace exists within our own innate Buddha nature. The source of war is also nothing more than avarice and the danger in our minds, the anger in our minds. Religion nurtures inner peace and teaches a path to eradicate the source of war from our minds.
Thank you, Gilberto. You reminded me of, you mentioned Walt and Millie Woodward and their courage. They were the first, and throughout the war, opposed editorial of the Internment, and pretty much a lone voice 64 years ago. Today, it's the other way around. And a telling point is in today's Seattle PI had an editorial about our ceremony today. I'd like to read one part of that passage related specifically to what Gilberto was talking about. The PI this morning said, "The Bush administration's defense of the suspension of habeas corpus, as hundreds of prisoners are held at Guantanamo Bay without charges, in a time of secret courts and warrantless searches, as America begins to confront its huge immigration issues and Arab Americans come under unwarranted suspicion, recognizing the injustice of internment Japanese Americans is a healthy reminder of the fragile nature of civil rights during times of national stress." When we were planning the ceremony, it was insistent among members of the community that we would not let this happen again, and it is happening again. We wanted to make sure that there was a representative who could speak on behalf of the Islamic community, of Muslim faith, and of Arab Americans.
At a time when the media and others are trying to connect the dots to arrive at a picture of what we could or should have known before the attacks of September 11th, magic provides insight to what we knew about the enemy threat in our country at the time of Pearl Harbor. As might be expected, there are many similarities between Imperial Japan's efforts and those of today's terrorists. Hard work, brilliant minds, and luck put us in a position to take advantage of Japanese mistakes. The importance of magic intelligence to the war effort was at least as great as of Ultra in the European theater. Safeguarding the secret that we had broken their top code was vital, and it could not be revealed to the public at the time to justify the evacuation. While it is common today to refer to the 10 relocation centers as concentration camps, they were far from that. By the end of 1944, almost 40,000 individuals had been relocated to jobs or schools in the interior states. 4,000 left to attend colleges and universities. In real life, and especially so during times of crisis, there is seldom a simple, clear-cut solution to problems. But in war, security and victory are prime imperatives. There is no doubt that many suffered from our government's muddling through the Japanese evacuation. But there are lessons to be learned today from a realistic assessment of that historical event. Finally, so that no one is blindsided, I should let you know that I spent 3+ years as a boy in real concentration camps in the Philippines during the war, and can attest to the fact that relocation centers were not concentration camps. Lee Allen, editor and publisher of Magic, The Untold Story by David D. Lohman.
Give a warm welcome to our very special guest from the Islamic Center of Washington, Adnan Bakar.
Prophet Muhammad said, never a task started in the name of God and finished with the thinking of God without going nicely and smoothly. That's why I start my speech right now with the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful. The ground does not belong to us, mankind. We are trusted with this earth to keep it the way God created. It belongs to our Creator. What a memorial. Memorial is to remember what happened in the past, not for certain people, but for all mankind. Is only the Japanese going to remember this ground? Only the Japanese going to visit the ground? I hope not. All mankind will remember what this memorial is created for. With the memorial also we have to remind each other. It's revealed in the Quran, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرْ إِلَّا مَنْ تَوَلَّى وَكَفَرْ فَيُعَذِّبُهُ اللَّهُ الْعَذَابَ الْأَكْبَرَ. Remind, that is your duty. Remind, and the people will remember, except the people who does not want to learn from the past. The word remind, it did not come to one person on earth, but it came to mankind to remind each other to what happened in the past, to not let it happen again and again. Unfortunately, it happened again after 60 years. I have known some people, their own crime is he is from Syria. Another person, his only crime, passing by an accident, puts his car in the way of the traffic to not get anybody hurt, and the police came and shackled him because he is from Iraq. He is a terrorist. When I came to the scene, they would not release him until I called the chief of police and told him whom they are holding and what his crime. Putting his car, putting himself in the way of raging drivers to prevent another accident happened. And he was shackled in the moment they saw him because he is an Arab. It happened again. When is that going to stop? God have created us on earth. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. I have created you. This is the quote from the Quran and the words of Allah, the word of God. I have created you, nations and tribes, so you will know each other and work with each other. The best of you is the most conscientious. The discrimination is not from religion. It comes from our own self, our own selfishness. None of the religion, the Hindu, the Buddhist, the Christianity, the Judaism, Islam, said anything about hating each other, but all of them peaceful religion, peaceful to work together. When are we going back to work with each other? When we individually, mankind, work with the words of God to the way it's supposed to be. With this memorial, I will ask you to take half a minute, and each one of you will pray in his own way to God to bless this ground and keep it to remind us of what happened in the past, not necessarily 60 years ago, but 40 years ago happened. Now it's happened, to never let it happen again. God, we ask you and nobody else to keep that memorial up to remind us with what happened and to not let it happen again. Assalamu alaikum.
And welcome to Rabbi Mark Glickman.
Good morning. On an airplane trip several years ago, my kids and I found ourselves seated across the aisle from a very distinguished-looking, 60-ish Japanese-American man. Dr. Kitamoto had shared a few of his memories with me during that plane trip, and indeed it is memory that has brought us all to this place today. The memories that these men and women have of displacement, of upheaval, of fear, of loss, and then of rebuilding too. I'm here as a representative of a people that, as Clarence said, has its own memories of oppression. Our experience as Jews has been different than that of the Japanese Americans, of course, for no two historical events are identical. But at least in a general sense, we Jews, like the Nisei, can look back into our history and find examples of suffering and cruelty right alongside those of happiness and success. And we learned some lessons along the way. At least I hope we have. So I hope you won't find it presumptuous of me to share a few of those lessons with you, a few things that we've learned along the way with you here this morning. One of the lessons has to do with the nature of memory. We have learned that our recollections of the pain and suffering of years past can be either redemptive or destructive, either quite healthy or terribly unhealthy. Some who survived the horrors of Nazi Europe, for example, emerged from that darkness as bearers of light, kind and sweet and life-affirming in all that they do. Understandably, however, other survivors came out mean and nasty, their memories having hardened their hearts and minds into what seems like stone, but what in reality is simply their humanity crouching behind a bulwark of pain and fear. Indeed, if it is our kindness and compassion that makes us most human, then as someone once noted, Hitler succeeds sometimes in killing even the survivors. May the memories of this place inspire us to be good and sweet, not tough and unfeeling. May those who are uprooted from their homes continue to be guided not by the anger and spite to which they may be entitled, but by the love and compassion that they've shown since, and that we so desperately need them to model for us. Another lesson is one that we Jews learned here in this country. And that is that although the United States isn't a perfect country, it is a very good one. A century ago, millions of Jews sailed past Lady Liberty, whose words beckoned the tired and the poor and the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Those words gave us great hope. But upon arrival, we found that even here, there were times when we remained tired and poor and hardly able to breathe free at all. In time, things became better, not perfect, but better than they were. Japanese families arriving here on a different shore, as we know, face horrible disappointments of their own. Indeed, the callous imprisonment of so many thousands of American citizens that we remember here this morning is one of the most shameful chapters in the history of our nation. But what we can be proud of is the fact that so many of us can now feel that shame. We know we can't undo past misdeeds, but we can come here, own up, and caution ourselves to avoid ever repeating those misdeeds in the future. America did something it should not have done, but here we are, committed to improving things, because we know how great our nation can be. Finally, we Jews have learned the power of vision. The Jewish tradition is replete with dreams, glorious dreams of what things will be like when we finally succeed in making our world the way it should be. Then each man will sit under his vine and fig with none to make him afraid. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they study war any more. The righteous shall flourish like palm trees and grow strong like the tall cedar. And in the darkest and most difficult of times, these visions were what saw us through. When life becomes rough and treacherous, our most important tool is vision. Vision of a better day. Perhaps this is why the psalmist said that when the Messiah comes, we'll be like dreamers. The Jewish messianic dream, you see, is a vision of simply being able to dream. May the memories of this place not mire us in anger, but inspire us to dream big, to dream of a day when such evil is no more, of a day of goodness and peace, when each is able to sit beneath his vine or beside his strawberries, with none to make him afraid. Dr. Kitamoto, if I recall, the Huskies won that Rose Bowl game. But for me, there was something even greater about that day, believe it or not. That day, I met a man who was sweet when he could have been surly, who reached out to others when his hands would have been far more comfortable in his lap, who gave a little girl a bit of his time and helped her have a good day. They tried to get you and the others down, Dr. Kitamoto, but in the long run, they couldn't do it. What I realized that day is that this game is still going on, and you and the others who are with you here today are winning. And what's more, through you and through those who can still affirm the goodness of life despite the cruelty they've seen, all the rest of us are winning too. When we Jews encounter great teachers, we're to say some ancient words with which I'll conclude my remarks this morning. In the presence of these great models of some of life's most important truths, I say, Baruch atah Adonai, chonen hadat. Blessed are you, O God, who bestows graciously such knowledge upon us. Thank you.
Koichi Barrish, thank you for your presence. Please give him a warm welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Now I'd like to do the Shinto ceremony. The nature of the ceremony is the oharai. Meaning of the ceremony is to purify the past, the present, the future, also to pacify the spirit of this land, as well as the mitama, the spirit of the people who have moved across this land. Everyone please bow slightly. This is called a harai gushi or onusa, meaning is to sweep aside obscuring vibration. Please everyone bow slightly and receive oharai. Thank you very much.
Now that we're all pure, very moving, thank you. Way before any of us, before the Japanese American pioneers came here at the turn of before the end of the 19th century, or any other families, this was the home to indigenous people, the Native Americans, the Suquamish. This land that we were on was their sacred place. The fronds that you were handed out are pieces of a cedar tree. It's behind us. This tall cedar tree by the water is on the National Register of Historic Places as a living witness to history. And you have a piece of that with you. You may do with it what you wish. And we are very honored to have a very special guest, the great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle, Jim Pratt. And Jim will give the blessings from the Suquamish.
This will be the first time I've done it solo, so you have your chance to run. We agree. We kwe bacheth hachab translates to nadito ne yone, translates to let it not happen again. We ought to buthed told all chath ataf sakwab ishad. Greetings from the Suquamish tribe. Siat kotitsta Sakwab, Luke Chad, Il, C.E. Ab, Suquamish, Ithlak, Akyak, Hali, Shabarachad, Atahik, Siab, Siat. My name is Jim Pratt. I'm a Suquamish elder. I am the hereditary chief of the Suquamish tribe. I am the last living great-great-grandson of the great Chief Seattle. Asquadashutchad, Quadid, Tiswatufted. Asquadid afchad, Trautid, Sahil, Trautid Slijas, Trautid Shali, Trautid Bakstab. Oshakadjad, Trautid Lukt, Trautid Chachas, Trautid Yahya, Trautid Asit Tabu. O Quadashutcha, Trautid Has Usid Altidisha. Us Quadashutcha, Trautid Has Usid, Trautid Tagwid, Alt. To us is the bless this land. I am thankful for my life. I am thankful for this day. I am thankful for my soul. I am thankful for all things. I honor my elders. I honor the children. I honor the friends. And I honor all peoples. I prayed for your safe journey here today. And I'll pray for your safe journey to your sacred home. Amen. Thank you.
By my watch, it just passed 11:03. This very minute, 64 years ago, that ferry left the dock. 227 Bainbridge Island, Japanese Americans, 2/3 of them American citizens. Some of them are right here with us. And for those of you and all the Niseis, I want to point out, you've mentioned Frank Kitamoto, Fumika Hayashida. It's a terrible thing to have your children leave and precede you in death before you, but her son was born, first one born in the camps. She's also the lovely woman you see in the pictures holding the baby. Fumiko, we thank you for coming. Please stand. And Kay Nakao was here, and Jerry, all of the Bainbridge Islands, all the Nisei, please stand and be recognized. This is the moment where you left and now you are back home. And let us remember that the vast majority of those witnesses are no longer here to give witness, but they're here in spirit. That was demonstrated by everybody who's here on this podium and all of you in the audience. Have one final presentation, and I'd like to introduce Jerry Hebert from the Washington State Human Rights Commission. Jerry?
Thank you, Clarence, ladies and gentlemen. Elder Pratt, thank you for welcoming us to your sacred lands. The Human Rights Commission has been following the community's efforts to honor our past and to recognize it. And in doing so, we passed a resolution in support of Pritchard Park and the Internment Memorial. And I'd like to read just a brief part of it, not all of the whereases and therefores. However, whereas the Japanese American Internment Memorial at Bainbridge Island is a step in the process of educating current and future generations of a dark part of this country's history in an effort to learn from the experience to ensure we do not duplicate the wrongs of the past. The greatest step in correcting a serious wrong is first to recognize the wrong and to sincerely apologize. As a commissioner with the Washington State Human Rights Commission, I offer on behalf of that commission that sincere apology. The next important step is the complete education of the truth and the effort to prevent a recurrence of wrongful treatment of any person based on a real or perceived difference from the majority population. Therefore, be it resolved by the Washington State Human Rights Commission that we endorse, salute, and support the Bainbridge Island community, the Friends of the Community, in their building of the Pritchard Park Japanese Internment Memorial Project. And I have a plaque for the city, for Clarence, and for Dr. Kitamoto. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. You made this a very special day. You will not recognize this place come summer. It's going to be an exciting transformation, and we have glad your support. I just realized I'd be happy to let you have this beautiful quilt for $3 million. Yeah, we'll take a check if they're not found. Thank you again. The buses are ready. Those especially who are going to the ferry, you may want to board it. We'll leave exactly at 15 after, so you can make sure you get that 11:30 ferry. And then the other bus is St. Barnabas. Thank you again for honoring us with your presence and your friendship. And thank you for your warmth and your love. Thank you very much.